In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars shone like scattered jewels and planets spun silently in endless space, the Vorathian Empire was one of the strongest civilizations known. Its people were tall, with skin that shimmered in faint colors and eyes that could see through the darkness of space. At the heart of this empire was Empress Clara, a woman known across galaxies for her intelligence, courage, and unshakable authority. For decades, she had ruled her people with a sharp mind and a steady hand, keeping neighboring systems in line and maintaining peace within her empire. Yet despite her power, there were always challenges. Political councils, rival leaders, and ambitious generals constantly sought ways to undermine her. Clara had faced threats before, from military coups to alien invaders, but her sharp mind had always kept the empire secure. Still, there was one thing she had never encountered: a human. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their unpredictability. Many species dismissed them as fragile or primitive, unable to survive in harsh environments or command complex technology. But there were whispers in the trade ports and space stations that humans had something extraordinary, a resilience and cleverness that could not be measured by alien standards. Clara had never met a human herself, so she was skeptical. Until the day Captain Elias Hart arrived. Elias was a human ambassador sent from Earth, representing a coalition of planets who wished to establish friendly relations with the Vorathian Empire. He was tall, with short dark hair, clear brown eyes, and a calm, confident presence. To the Vorathians, he looked ordinary, almost too ordinary for someone traveling across galaxies to meet an Empress. But his confidence, the way he held himself, and his sharp, curious gaze suggested he was not an ordinary diplomat. The council had warned Clara. "Empress," said General Tovak, her most trusted military advisor, "humans are unpredictable. They may come with peaceful intentions, but their behavior is unusual. Be cautious." Clara had smiled slightly. "Caution is wise," she replied, her voice smooth, "but curiosity is equally valuable. Let us see what this human can offer." When Elias arrived at the Imperial Palace, he marveled at its grandeur. The palace was a massive structure floating on the edge of Vorthia's largest city, with towers that glimmered in soft lights, gardens that floated in midair, and corridors lined with alien art. Vorathians moved gracefully, their steps silent but precise. Every detail screamed power and control, yet Elias felt no fear. Instead, he felt excitement, a chance to bridge worlds, to prove that humans could match any civilization in the galaxy. Their first meeting was formal. Clara sat on her elevated throne, her eyes studying Elias carefully. She had heard of his reputation, not as a warrior, but as a negotiator, a thinker, and someone who had survived many dangerous missions on Earth. Yet even she underestimated him. "Captain Elias Hart," she said, her voice like the chime of metal, "welcome to Vorathia. I hope your journey was pleasant." Elias bowed slightly, his voice steady. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It was eventful, but I am honored to be here." There was a pause, a quiet tension in the room as alien advisors watched closely. The humans, in their simplicity, seemed fragile, too many of them. But Clara noticed something different: a calm confidence that did not depend on alien technology or brute strength. It intrigued her. The negotiations began. Human representatives proposed trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and a promise of alliance against common threats in the galaxy. Clara listened, evaluating every word. To her surprise, the humans offered more than she expected. They spoke of strategies, technologies, and solutions that even her top advisors had not considered. Their approach was unorthodox, but there was logic behind it, a logic that made sense. Days passed, and Elias continued to impress not just Clara, but the entire council. He adapted quickly to Vorathian culture, learned their language faster than anyone expected, and even suggested improvements to the palace's energy systems, which were centuries ahead of Earth technology. Clara found herself smiling more than she intended. There was something refreshing about a being who did not bow blindly to power, yet commanded respect through intelligence and courage. One evening, Clara called Elias to a private chamber, away from the eyes of her court. The room was quiet, lit by soft bioluminescent panels that changed colors slowly. "Captain Hart," she began, "your ideas are impressive. Your people seem different, unpredictable, and yet effective. Tell me what makes humans so resilient." Elias looked around, considering his words carefully. "We survive by thinking, Your Majesty, by working together, by never giving up, even when things seem impossible. Strength isn't just muscle or weapons, it's determination, creativity, and courage." Cleara's eyes narrowed slightly. His words were simple, yet carried weight. Most species relied on strength or advanced technology. Humans relied on something deeper, willpower. She found the idea fascinating and unsettling. It was during this time that the unexpected happened. Political pressures and galactic rumors forced Cleara into a bold decision to strengthen ties with the human coalition and prevent war with neighboring systems. She proposed a union and alliance sealed through marriage. The council was shocked. Marriage was sacred, usually reserved for political heirs or Vorathian nobility. A union with a human was unheard of. Cleara approached Elias privately. "Captain Hart," she said calmly, "our worlds face uncertainty. An alliance through marriage will secure peace and cooperation. Will you accept this proposal?" Elias hesitated. Marriage across species was unprecedented, and the implications were enormous. But he saw the potential, an opportunity not just for peace, but to show that humans were capable of standing alongside even the most powerful empires. He nodded firmly. "Yes, Your Majesty, I will." The news sent shock waves through Vorathia. Citizens whispered, diplomats debated, and neighboring empires watched in disbelief. Yet Cleara remained composed. She had made her decision and, for the first time, she felt a spark of curiosity and excitement about the human who would soon become her partner. Preparation for the union began. Humans and Vorathians exchanged cultural rituals, learning about each other's traditions. Elias adapted quickly, sometimes with clumsy humor, which made Cleara smile despite herself. Slowly, the Empress realized that this human was more than a representative. He was intelligent, resourceful, and capable of things she had never anticipated. One night, as the ceremony approached, Cleara stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Stars stretched endlessly above, a reminder of the vastness of the universe. She thought about Elias, the human who had captured her attention, not through power or force, but through mind and courage. There was something about him that was different, something she could not yet understand. "I wonder," she whispered to herself, "what strength he truly holds." And in that quiet moment, neither Cleara nor anyone else could have imagined just how extraordinary this human was, or how profoundly he would change the empire he had married into. The galaxy was about to witness something new, a union not just of worlds, but of ideas, courage, and unexpected strength. The grand palace of Vorathia was a marvel to behold. Towers stretched high into the violet sky, their tips glowing softly with energy collected from the planet's magnetic field. Floating gardens drifted between spires, with plants that shimmered and pulsed in rhythm with the planet's faint hum. Everything in the palace reflected precision, discipline, and control. Every detail was calculated, every moment measured. Yet for Captain Elias Hart, it was a place of fascination and challenge. Life in the palace was unlike anything he had known. The corridors were silent but alive with a quiet energy. Vorathians gliding gracefully as if moving on currents of air rather than floors. Doors responded to gestures, walls displayed information instantly, and devices that humans could not yet imagine hovered silently. For a brief moment, Elias wondered if he had walked into a dream, but he quickly reminded himself this was reality, and he was here to represent humanity. The first days were challenging. Every custom, every protocol seemed designed to test patience. Vorathians had rules for how to enter a room, how to bow, how to speak, and even small mistakes drew curious glances. Elias stumbled at times. He mispronounced words, moved incorrectly, or forgot subtle gestures. Each time, Cleara's eyes studied him carefully. Sometimes they were sharp, judging. Sometimes they held a flicker of amusement. "Human customs are different," she said one evening, speaking quietly as they walked through a floating garden. The air smelled faintly of electric ozone and alien flowers. You adapt quickly, but there is much you do not yet understand, Elias smiled. I do my best. I'm learning. Clara raised an eyebrow. Learning is not enough. You must understand not just the words or actions, but the meaning behind them. Here, understanding gives power. Elias nodded. He understood the subtle warning. The palace was as much a battlefield of intellect as any warfront. A misstep could be costly. Yet, strangely, he did not feel fear. Instead, he felt challenge, excitement, and a spark of determination. Humans were not easily discouraged. Adaptation was in their nature. The first real test came when a sudden technical issue rose in the palace. The central energy core, a massive glowing orb that powered the palace and much of the city, began to fluctuate. Alarms sounded softly, but there was no panic. Varathians approached the problem systematically, following protocols and complex calculations. Elias, watching, noticed something others overlooked, a pattern in the fluctuation. Subtle clues in the energy readings that hinted at a simple solution. Without hesitation, he approached the console. His hands moved with purpose, touching the holographic displays, redirecting minor energy flows, and recalibrating sequences that no Varathian had thought to adjust. Within moments, the core stabilized, its glow returning to a steady, calm brilliance. The council, watching from the observation chamber, was stunned. They had expected errors, delays, even failure, but this human had solved a problem that had baffled the best Varathian engineers. Clara stood silently, her eyes fixed on him, her thoughts racing. Impressive, she said finally, her voice calm but carrying an edge of surprise. You see patterns others cannot. You act where others hesitate. Elias shrugged, modest. I just try to think differently. Sometimes the answer is simple, even if it seems complicated. Clara's gaze lingered. There was more to this human than she had imagined. He did not rely on technology alone, nor on brute strength. His mind was sharp, flexible, and fearless, a combination rare among the galaxy's most powerful beings. Over the following weeks, Elias continued to adapt to palace life, and the cultural collisions grew more interesting. He learned the etiquette of Varathian meals, where flavors were tested for both balance and energy efficiency. He trained with warriors, learning alien combat techniques and surprising instructors with his intuition. While the Varathians had centuries of experience, humans had creativity and unpredictability. When a sparring exercise became too rigid, Elias improvised, using movement patterns no one had taught him. The result was both unorthodox and effective, earning cautious admiration from even the most skeptical instructors. Clara, observing these events, began to question her assumptions. Humans were fragile in body, yes, but their minds were extraordinary. They could learn, adapt, and improve faster than even highly trained Varathians in unfamiliar situations. It was unsettling and exhilarating. The real test came during a ceremonial inspection of palace defenses. A small malfunction triggered an automated security drill. Guards, expecting a standard evaluation, followed procedure meticulously. The drills were meant to test reactions, but the malfunction created unpredictability. With some defense drones moving erratically, chaos began to ripple through the corridors. Elias stepped forward. He analyzed the situation, directing guards, predicting drone movements, and coordinating actions. Where Varathians relied on strict patterns, he introduced improvisation, dividing attention strategically, moving unpredictably, and keeping the drones from overwhelming the palace. The situation stabilized quickly, the crisis resolved before it could escalate. Clara watched silently from above, a growing admiration mixed with astonishment. She had seen many generals command troops, many scientists handle crises, yet none had moved with such clarity, courage, and ingenuity. This human was different. Afterward, she approached him in the courtyard, where alien plants glowed softly under the twin moons of Varathia. You are remarkable, she said. You think in ways that are alien even to us. Tell me, Captain Hart, have humans always been this capable? Elias shook his head. No, but humans survive by learning, by trying, failing, and trying again. That's our strength. We don't rely on perfection, we rely on persistence, and on each other. Clara considered his words carefully. There was truth in them. Varathians relied heavily on rules, traditions, and logic. Humans relied on instinct, creativity, and determination. In some ways, it was chaotic. But in that chaos lay power Clara had never truly measured before. Meanwhile, rumors of the human ambassador's capabilities spread throughout the palace. Guards whispered about his skill in combat drills. Technicians marveled at his quick problem-solving. Diplomats noted his ability to negotiate subtly, thinking several steps ahead. The council began to view him not merely as a representative of a fragile species, but as a figure of potential influence and power. Even Clara's closest allies began to adjust their expectations. General Tovak, who had once warned about humans being unpredictable, now nodded silently in approval when Elias made decisions during training or inspections. It was a quiet acknowledgement. Perhaps humans were not to be underestimated. Yet Elias remained humble. He did not flaunt skill or knowledge. He worked, observed, and adapted, earning respect without arrogance. This combination of humility and ability fascinated Clara the most. She had met many leaders in her life, some brilliant, some cruel, some charismatic, but few had the quiet strength to inspire loyalty without demanding it. As the days passed, Elias and Clara spent more time together, not formally, but through shared tasks, conversations, and observations. She began to notice the subtle ways he viewed the world, the way he questioned assumptions, the way he found solutions where others saw obstacles, the way he remained calm even under pressure. One evening, during a walk along the palace's floating gardens, Clara spoke quietly. "Captain Hart, there is a quality in humans I do not fully understand. You adapt, improvise, yet you do not seem afraid, even in situations that would terrify others. Why is that?" Elias looked at the twin moons reflected in the crystal-clear pools below. "We face danger because we must, not because we want to. Fear is natural, but it doesn't control us. We push forward because giving up is not an option. That is our strength, resilience, courage, and the will to survive." Clara was silent, absorbing his words. She had faced countless threats, led armies, and navigated political intrigues. Yet this simple statement struck her deeply. It was a reminder that strength was not always visible in muscle, armor, or weapons. Sometimes it was in the mind and heart. The human ambassador had arrived as a guest, a representative, and perhaps a curiosity. But Clara now realized he was more than that. He was a catalyst for change, a force that could challenge traditions, inspire people, and reshape the empire in ways she had never imagined. And for the first time in her life, the Empress felt a spark of something new: curiosity, admiration, and perhaps a hint of awe. Elias Hart was no ordinary human. He was something extraordinary. The galaxy was watching, and Clara knew it. But what she did not yet know was this: the true strength of humanity, the resilience and ingenuity that had allowed them to survive countless challenges on their homeworld was only beginning to reveal itself. And when it did, it would leave empires shaken, alliances rewritten, and the Varathian Empress both stunned and inspired. The calm of Vorthia's floating gardens and glittering towers could not last forever. Despite the Empire's strength, threats lingered at the edges of the galaxy. Neighboring systems that had long watched Vorathia with envy and suspicion. For months, diplomats had warned of a possible invasion by the Sirith Dominion, a neighboring alien empire known for its cunning and ruthlessness. Empress Clara had prepared her forces, confident in the precision and discipline of her armies. Yet no preparation could anticipate what was about to unfold. It began with a single warning signal. A fleet of Sirith ships detected near the outer colonies. Vorathian sensors, the most advanced in the galaxy, immediately reported the fleet's size, composition, and trajectory. The council convened in a high chamber of the palace, its walls glowing with holographic maps of the approaching threat. "This is no small raid," General Tovak said, his voice low but urgent. "They are sending warships, drones, and boarding squads. If we fail, colonies on the border could fall within hours." Clara's expression remained calm. She had faced countless battles before, yet a subtle tension ran through the room. This was a large-scale attack, faster and more aggressive than most had predicted. Every general had a plan, and yet there was no certainty in war. Elias stood quietly, observing the maps, the positions of the fleets, and the calculations of Vorathian tacticians. He did not speak at first, but his mind raced. Humans had faced battles too, albeit smaller in scale, but they had always relied on ingenuity, adaptability, and unpredictability. Patterns that Vorathians followed rigidly could be anticipated by enemies. Perhaps there was another way and approach no one in the council had yet considered. Clara noticed him studying the maps intently. "Do you have a suggestion, Captain Hart?" she asked, curious. Elias looked up, calm but firm. "Yes, Your Majesty. I see an opportunity to use their predictability against them. The Sirith Dominion expects us to respond with full frontal defense. But if we divide our attention and create unexpected obstacles, we can slow their advance and force them into positions where they are vulnerable." The generals exchanged uncertain glances. Vorathians had been trained to follow strict battle formations, not improvisation. Yet Clara studied Elias's expression and saw no arrogance, only logic and clarity. She made a decision. "Very well," she said. "We will follow your plan." The preparations began immediately. Vorathian fleets moved into formation, but under Elias's guidance, they split into smaller, unpredictable units. Drones were positioned in ways no Vorathian commander had attempted, creating false targets and deceptive signals. Communication protocols were altered, slightly small changes, but enough to confuse the enemy. As night fell over the colonies, the first wave of Sirith ships entered Vorathian space. Their appearance was sudden, sleek ships with black hulls and weapons that glowed ominously. Alarms blared across the colonies as automated defenses activated. Soldiers rushed to stations, drones deployed, and energy shields hummed to life. At first, the battle seemed like chaos. Sirith ships advanced quickly, cutting through defenses with precision. Vorathian soldiers were trained, but the enemy's movements were aggressive and relentless. Yet Elias moved among the command centers and communications hubs like a conductor of an orchestra, directing units, adjusting tactics, and improvising with rapid intelligence. A Vorathian fleet commander approached Clara, frustration in his voice. "Empress, this plan is unusual. Humans cannot possibly anticipate their every move." Clara's gaze was steady. "Watch and see. Captain Hart has insight we cannot ignore." The Sirith Dominion was confident, assuming their disciplined attack would overwhelm the border colonies. But the humans' plan worked. By dividing the Vorathian forces into smaller, unexpected formations and using decoys, Elias created confusion among the Sirith ranks. Their drones collided with each other, and their ships struggled to predict movements. A Vorathian squadron that had been hidden behind a floating asteroid field struck suddenly, disabling key Sirith engines. The turning point came when a Sirith boarding team attempted to infiltrate a colony station. Soldiers were trained, security measures were advanced, and yet they underestimated Elias's foresight. He had anticipated their moves, predicted their timing, and set traps that neutralized the intruders before they could reach the core. The battle was intense, but human intuition, combined with Vorathian technology, began to shift the advantage. Clara watched from the palace observation deck, astonished. "They are following human logic," she muttered. "It is effective." As the hours passed, the Sirith Dominion's attack faltered. Their formations became erratic, their commanders struggled to respond, and their forces began to retreat. Vorathian units, guided by Elias, pursued strategically, capturing key ships without unnecessary loss. By dawn, the border colonies were secure, the fleet battered but victorious. After the battle, the council convened again. The generals were silent, unwilling to argue with results. Clara turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting both admiration and surprise. "Captain Hart, your strategies saved thousands of lives. You saw what others could not and acted decisively. Tell me, how did you know?" Elias smiled faintly. "We humans rely on observation, adaptability, and unpredictability. You train for what is expected. We prepare for what is possible. War is not only about strength, it's about seeing patterns, anticipating, and acting quickly. That is how we survive. Clara studied him closely. She had commanded fleets, led armies, and faced countless enemies. Yet this human had shown a type of strength she had never truly measured. It was not in his arms or armor, but in his mind, his intuition, and his courage. Word of the victory spread quickly across Vorathia. Citizens celebrated the defense of their colonies, and diplomats reported to Clara that the Sirith Dominion had been humiliated and confused by the unexpected tactics. Yet the most astonishing aspect, to many, was that it had been a human who orchestrated the turnaround. Even the most skeptical council members could not hide their respect. General Tovak, who had once warned against trusting humans, now nodded solemnly at Elias. It seems we underestimated them, he admitted. Elias remained humble, focused on the next steps. He knew the Sirith Dominion would not forget this defeat. They would adapt, plan, and attempt new strategies. But he was ready. Humans thrived in challenges that required creativity and courage, and this was only the beginning. In the quiet hours after the battle, Clara sought Elias out. They stood together on a balcony overlooking a repaired colony, its lights twinkling like stars beneath them. "You were extraordinary today," she said softly. "Not just in strategy, but in leadership. You inspired soldiers, scientists, and even me." Elias shook his head. "I only did what was necessary. The credit goes to everyone who fought, who trusted each other, and who adapted to the unexpected. That is human strength, but also strength anyone can find if they are willing to try." Clara looked at him thoughtfully. For the first time, she realized that human strength was not a force to be measured by physical power or technology alone. It was a combination of courage, creativity, and relentless will, a type of power that could change the outcome of battles, and perhaps even empires. The events of that day marked a turning point. Vorathians began to see humans not as fragile outsiders, but as unpredictable, capable, and resourceful allies. Soldiers who had doubted Elias's abilities now sought his guidance. Scientists who had questioned human ingenuity now studied his methods. And the Empress herself could not deny the truth she had long suspected. The human she had married was extraordinary, and the galaxy had yet to see the full extent of his strength. But even as Vorathia celebrated, shadows of war still loomed. The Sirith Dominion would return, more cautious and more determined. New threats from other systems lingered, and Clara knew that the human's abilities would soon be tested in ways no one could predict. For Elias, the victory was not the end, but the beginning. He had proven that humans could survive, adapt, and triumph in a galaxy that underestimated them. And in doing so, he had begun to reshape the way the Vorathian Empire and perhaps the entire galaxy perceived his species. Clara watched him quietly, feeling a mix of awe, respect, and a strange, unfamiliar curiosity. This was a human unlike any she had imagined, capable of turning chaos into order, danger into opportunity, and doubt into victory. And as the twin moons of Vorathia reflected in the palace pools, she knew one thing for certain: the human she had married was only beginning to reveal the true strength that lay within him. The galaxy had witnessed his brilliance in battle, but the story of his extraordinary abilities and the full measure of human resilience was far from complete. The battle with the Sirith Dominion had ended, but the echoes of its lessons lingered throughout the Vorathian Empire. Colonies repaired, fleets reorganized, and the council deliberated on long-term strategies to prevent future attacks. Yet amidst the triumph, one truth had begun to crystallize in Clara's mind, Captain Elias Hart. The human she had married was no ordinary being. For days, she had watched him quietly, observing not only how he handled the Empire's immediate crises, but also how he interacted with the people. Soldiers and engineers, diplomats and citizens, all looked to him for guidance, sometimes even more than to her. There was a magnetism in his mind, a combination of calm reasoning, quick thinking, and relentless determination. The Empress had faced brilliant leaders before, but Elias's way of thinking was unlike anything she had encountered. One morning, Clara invited him to the Imperial Council chamber for a private audience. The chamber was massive, walls covered with glowing symbols of Vorathian history, and a soft hum of energy filled the air. Elias entered with his usual calm demeanor, bowing slightly in respect. "Captain Hart," Clara began, "I have seen your skills in strategy, your courage in battle, and your ability to inspire others. But I sense there is more to your strength than even these accomplishments show. Tell me, what is it that gives humans their resilience?" Elias considered her question, gazing at the vast room. "It is not a single thing, Your Majesty," he said slowly. "It is a combination of mind, heart, and will. Humans survive not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to give up. We adapt to the unexpected, find solutions where none seem possible, and work together even when the odds are against us. That is our true strength." Clara listened carefully, her mind racing. She had led armies and ruled an empire, relying on rules, tradition, and careful calculation. Yet Elias spoke of a type of strength that was deeper, unpredictable, and fluid. It was a quality that could not be measured by technology or brute force alone. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent reports from the outer colonies. A smaller fleet of the Sirith Dominion had regrouped, attempting to infiltrate Vorathian trade routes. Clara turned to Elias. "We face them again," she said. "Are you ready?" Elias nodded. "We are ready. We will need to be creative and act quickly. Relying solely on rules or tradition will not be enough this time," the Empress agreed. She knew the next test would reveal more about the human she had married than any battle before. In the following hours, Elias coordinated a series of maneuvers that astonished even seasoned Vorathian commanders. He combined intelligence from scouts, predictive algorithms from the palace's systems, and his own observations of enemy behavior to create a plan unlike anything the Empire had seen. Ships moved in seemingly chaotic patterns, drones acted unpredictably, and decoys were deployed in ways that made the Sirith fleet question reality during the battle. Clara observed Elias's brilliance firsthand. He anticipated enemy movements, predicted attacks, and adjusted strategies on the fly. When a fleet was cornered, he suggested a maneuver that used gravitational currents of a nearby planet, allowing Vorathian ships to escape and counterattack simultaneously. The move was risky, but executed perfectly. The enemy, caught off guard, faltered, and retreated. After the battle, Clara summoned Elias to the palace balcony. The city below glimmered with lights restored after the conflict. "Captain Hart," she said, her voice tinged with awe, "you did not just win battles, you reshaped the way my empire fights. How do you do it?" Elias looked out at the horizon, the twin moons reflecting in his eyes. "We think differently, Your Majesty. Where others see limits, we see possibilities. Where others see rules, we see options. Strength is not just in muscle or machines, it is in mind, creativity, and the willingness to act when it matters most." Clara stood silently, absorbing his words. For the first time, she realized that humans were not merely allies, they were innovators, problem solvers, and catalysts for change. The human she had married was not only capable of extraordinary deeds, but he also had the power to transform entire civilizations. In the days that followed, Elias demonstrated other qualities that further amazed the Empress. He devised new methods to optimize energy distribution in the palace, making power grids more efficient. He suggested improvements to Vorathian training programs, teaching soldiers how to adapt to unpredictable scenarios rather than relying solely on tradition. He encouraged the council to consider alternative diplomatic solutions that balanced logic with intuition. Clara observed all of this, feeling a mix of admiration and humility. She had thought she knew power, strategy, and leadership, but Elias was showing her a new way to view them. Humans did not dominate through sheer force. They inspired through ingenuity, courage, and persistence. One evening, Clara invited Elias to a quiet chamber overlooking the floating gardens. The sky was a deep violet, dotted with stars, and the soft hum of energy filled the air. "Captain Hart," she began, "I have seen your skills, your courage, and your intelligence. But there is something else, something I do not yet fully understand. You inspire people, not through command, but through action. How do you do that? Elias smiled faintly. We humans lead by example. We show others what is possible, and we trust them to act with courage and intelligence. It is not control that matters, it is partnership, understanding, and belief in what can be achieved together. Clara studied him, realizing the truth of his words. In a single battle, he had not only protected the Empire, but had also taught Varathians a new way to think, a new way to approach problems. He had challenged assumptions, reshaped strategies, and inspired loyalty without demanding it. This was strength in its purest form, quiet, profound, and transformative. The Empress felt a change within herself. She had ruled with logic, discipline, and authority, but Elias was teaching her that strength could also come from trust, creativity, and collaboration. Humans, she realized, were not fragile or limited, they were extraordinary, capable of achieving things that even the most disciplined civilizations might overlook. As the days passed, word of Elias's abilities spread across the Empire. Citizens, soldiers, and diplomats all recognized the human's contributions. He had saved colonies, guided fleets, and improved systems, all without ever seeking glory. Yet his humility only made his strength more remarkable. One day, a Varathian general approached Clara. Empress, I must admit, I underestimated this human. His abilities are beyond anything I have seen, and his influence on our people is profound. We should consider him not just an ally, but a true partner in leading the Empire. Clara nodded. She had come to the same conclusion herself. Elias Hart was more than a representative of a distant planet. He was a force for change, a symbol of ingenuity, courage, and resilience. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. In a private moment, Clara turned to Elias. You have shown me the true strength of your people, she said softly. Not in weapons or armor, but in courage, intelligence, and determination. I underestimated you before, but now I see clearly. You are extraordinary. Elias looked at her, calm and steady. Thank you, Your Majesty. But it is not just me. Humans survive and succeed because we work together, trust each other, and never give up. That is the real strength. I am only one example. Clara considered his words carefully. In the human simplicity and clarity lay profound wisdom. She realized that this understanding could transform her empire, guide it to new heights, and inspire generations to come. The galaxy had witnessed Elias's brilliance in battle, but now Clara understood that his true power was not only in strategy or courage, it was in his mind, his heart, and his vision. This human, whom she had married, was a catalyst for a new era, and as she stood beside him on the balcony, watching the stars twinkle above Varathia, the Empress knew one thing for certain: the human she had married would change the Empire, the galaxy, and perhaps even the way all civilizations understood strength. The revelation of his true abilities was only the beginning. The next challenges would test him even further, but Clara had no doubt that he would rise to meet them. For in Elias' heart, she had discovered a type of strength that was not just formidable, it was transformative, inspiring, and entirely human. The galaxy had changed. The Sirith Dominion had been defeated, their fleets scattered and humbled. But the effects of Elias Hart's actions went far beyond any single battle. Across Varathia, citizens and leaders alike were beginning to understand that humans were not the fragile species many had assumed. They were adaptable, resourceful, and capable of feats that even the most advanced civilizations struggled to match. And at the heart of this revelation stood the human who had married their Empress. Empress Clara observed her empire from the balcony of the central palace. The city below shimmered in twilight, floating gardens and towers reflecting light across the calm waters. Life had returned to normal after the recent threats, yet something had shifted. People moved with renewed confidence, soldiers trained with new methods, and councils debated ideas they had never considered before. Varathia was no longer just a strong empire, it was evolving. Elias approached, calm as always, carrying reports from the outer colonies. The fleets are reorganized, and defenses have been strengthened, he said. But this is only the beginning. There are more ways we can improve the empire if we are willing to embrace change. Clara turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. You speak of transformation as though it is simple, but you have shown me, and everyone else, that strength is more than weapons or rules. It is ingenuity, courage, and determination. You have taught us that humans can shape the future in ways we never imagined. Elias nodded. Humans survive and thrive because we look for possibilities, not just solutions. Where others see limits, we see opportunities. That mindset, combined with Vorathian discipline and technology, can achieve things neither of us could accomplish alone. It was true. Under Elias's guidance, the Empire began implementing new strategies. Trade routes were reorganized for efficiency, fleets trained with adaptive techniques, and colonies introduced systems to encourage innovation and collaboration. Citizens were inspired to think creatively, to take initiative, and to act when others hesitated. The ripple effect was immediate. Where once tradition ruled every aspect of Vorathian life, now ideas flowed freely, and the potential for growth seemed limitless. Word of these changes spread beyond Vorathia. Neighboring systems watched as the Empire not only recovered from war, but flourished. Guided by the combination of Vorathian strength and human ingenuity, diplomatic envoys approached with new respect, recognizing that the human presence in the palace was not merely symbolic. It represented a new era of possibility and progress. One morning, Clara called a council meeting unlike any other. Generals, scientists, diplomats, and advisors gathered in the central chamber, all eager to hear her words. Today, she began, we celebrate not just survival, but growth. Our victories were hard-won, and our challenges will continue. But we have learned that strength is more than power. It is creativity, courage, and collaboration. And we have a remarkable example of that strength in our midst. All eyes turned to Elias. The room was silent, but the admiration was palpable. Soldiers remembered his strategies in battle. Engineers recalled his innovations in the palace. Diplomats marveled at his ability to foresee consequences and adapt quickly. He stood humbly, accepting their respect without arrogance. We have an opportunity, he said quietly, to create a future where all of us humans, Vorathians, and our allies work together to face challenges, learn from each other, and build a galaxy where strength comes from more than force alone. The Sirith Dominion may return, and other threats may arise, but if we continue to adapt, trust each other, and act with courage, there is nothing we cannot overcome. The council erupted in agreement. For the first time, tradition and innovation moved together, guided by the human who had shown them the true measure of resilience. Clara felt a profound sense of pride. She had married a being whose strength was not merely physical or technological, but deeply human, resilient, creative, and unwavering. The following weeks brought tangible results. Colonies began sharing innovative technologies with one another, allowing rapid improvements in energy efficiency, transportation, and communication. Fleet commanders implemented training exercises based on unpredictability and adaptability, producing units capable of responding to unexpected threats. Diplomats, inspired by Elias's example, found peaceful solutions to conflicts that had long seemed unsolvable. Clara walked through the city one evening, observing citizens going about their lives with a newfound energy. Children played near floating gardens, soldiers trained with adaptive drills, and scientists collaborated openly on new inventions. The Empire was alive with potential, and much of this change was inspired by a human who had arrived not as a conqueror, but as a partner. As she returned to the palace, Clara found Elias waiting on the balcony. The twin moons reflected in the pools below, casting a serene glow over the city. You have changed the Empire, she said softly, not by commanding, but by showing what is possible. Your strength is extraordinary, Captain Hart. Elias looked at her calmly. Strength is not mine alone, Your Majesty. It is in everyone who chooses to act, to think, and to work together. Humans have survived for centuries by relying on each other, and I hope the same can be true for Vorathia. Together, we can achieve more than any of us could alone. Clara nodded, understanding fully now what she had glimpsed before. Humans were not just allies, they were catalysts for transformation. And in Elias, she had found not only a partner in marriage, but a leader. a teacher, and a symbol of hope. In the months that followed, the Empire expanded its influence through diplomacy and cooperation rather than conquest alone. Trade flourished, cultural exchanges enriched Vorathian society, and the combined intelligence of humans and Vorathians solved problems that had long been considered impossible. The galaxy watched in awe as a new era emerged, guided by the unusual yet remarkable alliance between an Empress and her human partner. Even the Sirith Dominion, once confident and aggressive, began to reconsider their approach. Messages arrived through channels of diplomacy, acknowledging the resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity of humans. The galaxy's perception of Earth and humanity shifted dramatically. No longer dismissed as weak or insignificant, humans were now recognized as formidable and capable of species whose strength was unpredictable, creative, and profound. Klyra reflected on the journey she and Elias had shared. From a political marriage of convenience, their bond had grown into a partnership of mutual respect and shared purpose. She admired his wisdom, courage, and humility. He admired her intelligence, decisiveness, and dedication. Together, they had transformed an empire and inspired an entire galaxy to see humans in a new light. One evening, as they stood together overlooking the city, Clara spoke softly. "Captain Hart, you have shown me the true strength of your people. You have inspired not only me, but all of Vorathia to think beyond limits. I do not think I will ever see the galaxy in the same way again." Elias smiled faintly. "And I do not think I will ever see Vorathia the same way either, Your Majesty. Together, we have a chance to create something extraordinary, a future where courage, creativity, and collaboration guide our choices." The Empress nodded, feeling the weight of those words. In Elias, she had found not only a remarkable human, but a symbol of hope for the galaxy, a reminder that strength was not always measured by size, power, or weapons, but by the mind, the heart, and the courage to act when it mattered most. The galaxy would remember this era. The alliance of Vorathia and humanity had created a model for cooperation, innovation, and resilience. Colonies thrived, fleets were stronger than ever, and diplomacy had reached unprecedented levels of effectiveness. Humans were no longer underestimated, they were celebrated for their ingenuity, determination, and leadership, and at the center of it all, the Empress and the human she had married stood together, guiding the Empire into a new era, one where tradition and innovation worked hand in hand, where strength was measured not only by might but by wisdom and courage, and where the extraordinary abilities of a human had changed the destiny of a civilization, and perhaps the entire galaxy. Clara took Elias's hand, feeling the quiet strength radiating from him. "We have done something remarkable," she said. "Together, we have shown that the galaxy is bigger than one empire, one species, or one way of thinking. And the best part, this is only the beginning." Elias nodded. "It is only the beginning, Your Majesty. There is much to achieve, many challenges to face, and many lives to inspire. But if we continue as we have, there is nothing we cannot overcome." The stars above Vorathia shimmered brighter than ever, reflecting a galaxy full of possibilities. The human who had arrived as a guest had become a partner, a leader, and a symbol of hope. The Vorathian Empress had witnessed the full measure of human strength, and in doing so, had begun to shape a future that no one could have imagined. Together, they looked out across the Empire, knowing that their partnership and the courage, creativity, and determination of humanity would guide Vorathia into an era of peace, prosperity, and limitless potential. The galaxy had changed forever.